It's a great honor for me to be here today. It's a privilege just to be in the room with most of you people, in fact, all of you people. I consider myself the lowest in the room, always. So thank you for having me. Today and yesterday, I missed yesterday because I was working to promote the event, and today, anyway, I've been here for much of the afternoon. Many of the speakers moved me to tears. Many of the videos that I see move me to tears. I just think that the strength that human beings have never ceases to amaze me. And I'm sure everyone here feels the same way. We're all kind of mutual minds. Anyway, I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm a little breathy because we just came running in. I brought my reading glasses, but I'm not going to read from my book, so they're just my security blanket. So my name is Biff Naked, and it's not really. I was born Baby Gilmore. I had no name. I'm an adopted kid, a very happy one. Very lucky that my adoption was predetermined. My parents were working as missionaries. I always tease my father, "Why were you trying to tame everybody and share your religion with them?" But the truth was, he was training dental therapists. They were stationed in India, and they were both just normal middle-class college students from the University of Minnesota. Their church was the United Methodist Church, and they were sent on several different journeys, I suppose. They went to India, and my father was training dental therapists in Bareilly, which is a little bit east of New Delhi. And adjoined to their facility was an ashram. And my mother, who was trained in education and as a nurse, was volunteering in the ashram next to the dental college while my dad worked all day. And that's where they encountered who would become my sister, Shireen. Shireen was a baby girl that was kind of, I guess, left at the ashram without any real idea where she came from. Obviously, the ashram took in the baby. And when the baby failed to thrive, my mother decided to take her home, where she started to find love, nourishment, and began to finally gain weight. So they adopted my sister, and as my parents have always told me, from that moment forward, they were pegged as suckers. And so when these crazy Canadians from New Delhi contacted the church organization saying that there's going to be a Canadian baby born in a couple months, and we know you're suckers for this type of thing, so consider it like a dog. Maybe you'd like to take on another one. And my father used to laugh when he told the story and said, "If nobody else wants the baby, we'll take the baby." He said, "We didn't care what gender you were. We didn't care how ugly you were. We were just going to take you. Lucky me." So that's how I came to be in the Torbert family. And my parents named me Beth. How Biff came out of Beth is kind of a dumb story from the 8th grade and Mark Bergen's cousin from England, but Biff and Beth sound the same, so I answer to both, just so you know. So my parents had to find a way to get these two little babies, a brown kid and a white kid, back to America from India, of course. It was not very common that these white American people would have a brown baby and some strange Canadian baby and try and get everybody back into America. So it took a little while. And to this day, I'm still trying to explain my lack of citizenship paperwork to the government. If they come through the door with handcuffs, you'll stand up for me today. Anyway, thank you. We grew up in Minnesota until my father and mother were trying to find another place where they would take their next missionary work. And it was either the Congo or the Pas, Manitoba. Luckily for me, I got to go to elementary school in the Pas. And my Manitoba roots were laid down and planted like wonderful seeds. I take a lot of pride in being Canadian. In fact, it's the only thing that was something I knew for sure my whole life, is that I was Canadian. I was the only Canadian in my family, and I loved it. My father would introduce me as, "This is Beth, she's our Canuck." I loved it. I was like, that's right, I'm the Canuck. And being from Manitoba is something that I still carry in my heart, and particularly from communities like the Pas. When I went to elementary school, the population in my little classrooms were made up from half of the kids from the adjoining reserve, and then half of us that lived in the town. And we never knew any different, except our little blended school. And eventually, my dad took another job, and we had to move, this time to Lexington, Kentucky. And for the first time, we experienced incredible racism living in Kentucky, where my sister was not known as a South Asian kid or an East Indian kid. She was just basically like one of the black kids in the school. And Kentucky in the late 70s, certainly in elementary school, was not a hospitable place for my sister, and eventually not for me. We liked to fight. It served us well. It got us out of a lot of trouble, but it stayed with us, and those emotional scars stayed with us, particularly my sister. After our elementary school career ended in Lexington, my father took another position training dental therapists near and around Dauphin, Manitoba, Canada's national Ukrainian capital. Oh, yes. So Ukrainian was offered in the junior high school as a language, but it was kind of frowned upon if you weren't one of the Ukrainian kids to take Ukrainian. So the rest of us took French. Je parle français juste un petit peu. Merci beaucoup. But unfortunately, my accent is not very good. Again, fills me with a great sense of pride as a Canadian person. Junior high was particularly exciting. Now, my parents, being missionaries, kept no alcohol in their home. They never did. We grew up in a home without alcohol. And when I came home one day in grade 8 to explain to my mother that I successfully learned with Kelly Mitchelluk how to flick my cigarette butt in the back lane on the way to school, well, I got a walloping, I tell you. And certainly, after we discovered beer underneath the bleachers at a Dauphin Kings game where the hockey players were on the ice, well, then that was it. I was grounded. I didn't like being grounded one bit, but it didn't stop me. Later on in that summer, we would sneak out of our parents' home and go to parties. Like any self-respecting prairie girls, we knew the boys were older and that we probably shouldn't have been there after dark. Now, when I was in junior high and high school, there was a rite of passage called a gangbang that happened. Everybody always knew which of the girls in grade 9 or 10 were gangbanged. What does it really mean? What does that mean? That means, they were making out with a bunch of guys they didn't really want to be making out with, or was it something different? We had no way of framing this, none. And it happened to me going into grade 8. Now, the thing about a gangbang is that you basically have to pull up your pants, find your coat, and quietly escape the party and walk silently home, wiping away your tears and hoping your mother wasn't waiting up for you, which of course my mother always was, because she sat in a little chair in the dark. 3 daughters. I was always the one coming in at 11 o'clock. This particular night, as I came in at 11 o'clock, I could hear my mother whisper to me, Beth, Beth. I'm like, shit. Not really thinking about anything that happened at the party, because that wasn't my fear. My fear was my mother being mad at me. So I said, Mom, I'm sorry. I know I broke curfew. And she's like, get to bed. Okay. And I went to bed. And that was the end. That was the end of my day. I just went to bed. Now, when I woke up in the morning and I talked to my mom, and of course my father gave us what was called his sermons, where he would drone on about the rules and the rules of the family. And we always expected it and waited for it and listened to it and just got through it. Sometimes if he wanted to impress upon us, he would actually swear when he was talking, which really made us roll our eyes because my parents did not swear or cuss. And when my dad left, my mom and I were alone in the kitchen, and I said, Mom, something happened last night at the party, and these boys, well, they all got me in a room. And my mom just looked at me and said, well, you broke curfew, honey. So you're going to be grounded. And I said, okay. Now, that wasn't really anything that I fault my mother for. Because in those days, we didn't call that was never called sexual assault. There was no word or way to frame that. I couldn't say to my mom, Mom, I got gangbanged. What would that mean? A, I'm not going to tell my mom that, just like I'm not going to tell her I gave, William Acevedo a blowjob. I'm not going to tell that to my mother. But those 2 words, did not leave upon me at that time a trauma. I did not know that was a crime. I did not know that was against the law. Today, it's against the law. What? Girls like me, we didn't have the opportunity to even frame it that way. So I look at it now and go, I did not take that on as a trauma. That's a way of intellectualizing it. Did I take it on as a trauma unknowingly in the course of my lifetime with all the failed relationships, all the people-pleasing and validation-seeking behaviors that I continued to perpetuate for myself? Probably, in fact, very likely I did. But in my generation, most of the girls did not take it on as a trauma. We had to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and walk into school with our heads held high. I never had a friend, ever, again, in junior high. I was a slut, which was fine with me. I kind of liked it because I became the class clown. And that was my coping technique, and it worked very well. I highly recommend making jokes because it makes people laugh and it takes the stress out of the room. When my father told us we were moving to Winnipeg, Manitoba to go to high school, I was fucking overjoyed. Oh my God, thank God. My younger sister was traumatized. She was shy, she had made friends. I didn't care. I wanted out of that town. And I moved on with my life. And I went to Iron Maiden, Power Slave Tour. Twisted Sister opened up for them. I dragged my little sister to the Winnipeg Arena. We were in the 4th row center. And Dee Snider spit on me. He spit on me. Saying, we're not going to take it, and spit on my face. I was in heaven. God, I was baptized into rock and roll. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. Pretty soon I discovered other music. I loved music. I loved playing air bands, but I never wanted to be a musician. My parents bought me a guitar for my 15th birthday. I never played it once. I was like, what do I want this for? I don't want it. I'm going to be a comedian. That's what I told my mother. I told my little sister, I'm going to be a comedian like Eddie Murphy. My sister, who would answer me the same way today, you're white. You can't be Eddie Murphy. And although she is correct, I was convinced I could be on Saturday Night Live. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it. That's what I told her. That's going to be me. I know it is. Ha, 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 ha. I was asked to model when I was 16 years old for someone I later learned was called the Velvet Tongue. Who knew? So we were asked to model, me and some other girls in my drama class, because we met him in the mall. And he said, you're so good looking, you could be in the Winnipeg Sun as a sun girl. A sun girl, yes. Me, moi? Yay! All we had to do was meet him in a hotel. No problem. I'm not going to tell my mom, because my mom would tell me I can't go. So I'm going to avoid that situation right now. I pack all my things in my little day bag, my little modeling bag, and I'm going to go. Well, I'm sure we can all guess the outcome of that. I was writing letters. Dear Bob Guccione, the owner of Penthouse magazine, I would like to be in your magazine so that I can be an actress. The 15-year-old brain is a really remarkable place. Remarkable. Well, obviously this guy was not really working for Penthouse magazine, but I believed he was, and I believed it would be my ticket. All I know for sure is thank God in heaven and the Creator and anyone else who's fucking listening that there was not digital photography back then. But it didn't work out, as you can imagine. 3 years later in high school, my best friend and I decided that I needed to move away from Winnipeg to become an actress, and that she was going to be my manager. The only way we could do that is to go to Toronto, so we were going to run away from home. Brilliant plan. We packed a duffel bag full of maxi pads. Literally, 25 maxi pads just in case we got our period. The teenage brain. We didn't work, of course. We didn't have any jobs, so we didn't have any money either. But somehow scraped together $50 a piece to get a bus ticket to Thunder Bay, Ontario. Just geniuses, just absolute geniuses. So we got on this Greyhound, said nothing to our parents, who by this time, were calling the police, who were doing very little. And we made it to Thunder Bay, got out in Thunder Bay, and started hitchhiking. Amazing. The first guy that picked us up was on his way to work. He was probably either working on the oil rig or in the forestry services as a laborer. I can't say for sure. but he was smoking marijuana joints as he drove. Now, I'd had my share of beer by the time I was 16 years old, but I was not about to stand for somebody driving on pot. Put that out. That was me, the missionary's kid. The same missionary's kid who thought she could go into penthouse. I didn't like the fact that he was smoking weed, and my friend was going with whatever I said, because I was the funny one. So we got out at the next stop. If he's turning, we're going to get out. We'll try to get another ride. So we got out of his car. Stupidest thing we ever did. Because the next ride we got, the guy looked like Les Nessman, I'm not going to lie to you. Seems like a good thing. In a K car, the color of a naked chicken, like this beige color K car. This is a forensics description if any cops are here. He picked us up and we very happily got in his car. I can't remember how far he drove us, probably only to Kenora or something. I don't even know how far it would have been. But he started telling us about Jesus and asking us if we believed in Jesus. And we said, yeah, okay, whatever. Trying to make conversation with this very terse, stern, strange individual. And eventually, he started asking us what we thought about marriage, started asking us if we've ever had marital relations. And I have to say, I never looked in his trunk. But we both got creeped out enough that when he stopped for gasoline, we pretended to go to the bathroom and then took off running away from him in a field. And he did bring his car around to try and look for us. Now, I can't say for sure if he was a serial killer. He could have just been a really nice guy, identifying us as being in a dangerous situation. I can't say for sure. But we left him there. The third ride we got was from an old trucker in a huge semi-trailer. It was raining. We were drowned rats. Our cigarette packs were wet. That was the biggest tragedy, by the way. Couldn't even smoke, couldn't light a match, raining so hard. He picked us up, told us he wasn't allowed to, and he could lose his job. But we were grateful for the ride. He told us to crawl in the back of his rig without any thought, without it even occurring to us, maybe it's a dangerous situation. We simply trusted him and went to sleep in the back. And I assure you, there are good people in this world because that man drove us straight to Toronto and said, here you are in Toronto. I hope you find your sister, because of course I lied to him. We're going to my sister's. So we got out, went to the bus stop in Toronto because I saw Madonna in a movie drying her armpits in the hairdryer, in the hand dryer. And I wanted to do that with my black bra under my white t-shirt. And so we did. We walked out of the Toronto bus station, not a care in the world, whistling Dixie. It must have been 9:30 or 10 in the morning, on a school day, for God's sakes. We went into a mall called the Eaton Center and met these two guys. They were our same age. They were skipping school. We had a hamburger and a soda pop with these two guys. We were so happy, making friends. They were like, hey, you can stay at my sister's place. Really? We can? Yes, you can. Come with us. Okay. Within 3 hours, we were in the hands of these two very impolite pimps and ready to go to work. We weren't even there a day, and I just knew it wasn't my destiny. I just thought, I don't think this can't happen because it's not how I see my Eddie Murphy life turning out. And they made a mistake. They left us in the back of a taxi while they went and dealt with some of their other employees, if I may. I leaned into the front of the cab, and said to this cabbie, who was extremely uncooperative, I said, "Excuse me, sir, anything you want us to do, we're going to do for you. Anything you want us to do. Just get us out of here. We don't know these guys. We need help. Please help us. I'll do anything. Just please help us." Begging, tears shooting straight out of my eyes. He was so annoyed. He just was like, "You're shitting me, kid." "No, I'm not shitting you. You got to get us out of here right now." He thought about it. He looked in the rearview mirror. He told us, "I don't need this." The cab fare must have been $80. He turned the meter off and said, "Put your seatbelts on." And he sped out of there, fishtailing so fast. Me and my friend were hugging and crying and just heaving sobs like the children that we were. And he drove and drove and drove. His name was Norman Davis. He was a Toronto cabbie. Norman drove us around. He got us some cigarettes and coffee at the 7-Eleven. We just stayed in his car. We just sat there. We didn't know anybody else. And he said, "My shift's up, girls. Let's go home." And we just sat there. "Okay, we'll go home." I whispered to my friend, "You have to fuck him. You're on the pill." She goes, "I do not." She hissed. She hissed at me. "All right then," I said, "I'll do it." And we both looked our separate ways out the window, smoking and angry at each other. And I thought, "Beth, put your game face on. You got to do it. It's the least I could do." So we pulled up in front of his little house. He lived in a basement. Should have been a flag. Lived in a basement. I jest. I've lived in a basement too. Just kidding. We went into his house and he said, "I'm going to make you some Kraft dinner. Do you like Kraft dinner?" "Yeah, we do. Thank you." And he was talking to us from the kitchen, and we were both sitting there on his couch, scowling at each other. And he came and sat in front of us. And he said, "I've decided what I want you girls to do for me." And I just looked at him and said, "I'll be the one. I'll be the one, sir." He started laughing. And he grabbed his rotary dial telephone and placed it right in front of me. And he said, "I want you to call your mother. You can charge it to my house. Call her right now." I argued with him, of course. I said it was the middle of the night. I can't call my mother. She'll get mad at me. But I called her. All I heard was this long exhale into the phone, which was my mother's crying. It makes me cry to this day. I broke her heart into a million pieces. And she never found all of them, I'm sure. But Norman Davis, the Toronto cabbie, let us sleep soundly for the night. And he woke us up in the morning, and he drove us around Toronto and showed us all the landmarks in the city he loved. He bought us meatball sandwiches in Little Italy, and we parked the cab in front of this house, and he said that house was blown up by the mafia. And we sat there eating, going, "Wow." He was so proud. And then he got us back to the bus depot, and he went in and talked to the staff, and they took up a collection to pay for our bus tickets home to Winnipeg. And we went home, and oh my God, I was grounded for so long. But I felt like I could die happy because I thought, why am I spared all this shit? I do not deserve to be spared these experiences. And I thought, I'm going to always carry them with me, these lessons, these gifts, these blessings. A couple years later, somehow, I graduated from high school and enrolled in the University of Winnipeg theater program, go figure. And I met a boy with a mohawk who was in a band in my first year. He took me to a show with a punk rock band, And I fell in love. This is my life. I thought, this is my dream. Their singer quit, and I had to take his place. So now I'm going to be fighting their audience, expecting this dude singing, and they're going to see me up there. I had to bring something unique to the table. My band, they were called Gorilla Gorilla. They said, we're going to call you Biff Naked on the poster. And then we're going to make these posters all over town. It's going to say, come see Biff Naked with your picture. That's all it's going to say. All right. What do I know? Well, let me tell you, that place was packed. What can I say? 18 and perky. But with a fire in my heart. And we did the show. And I stage dove. And there was no looking back. Naturally, I married my drummer when I was 18 years old. My parents were so unhappy with that. But my mother said nothing to me. And she said, okay, Beth, we'll have a wedding. And we were married at the West End Cultural Center in Winnipeg on a snowy April day. My friend told me, if it rains on your wedding day, there'll be no tears in the marriage. Have you ever heard that before? It's bullshit. But that's what they said to me, and I thought, well, gosh, I wonder what it means that it's snowing then. It must be something quite significant. So I married Brett, and we were very happy for a good 6 weeks or so. It was joy, it was serendipity. Wonderful. And then it started to go downhill, as you can imagine. But I thought, I'm going to learn professionalism out of this, God. I know that it really sucks having to work with this person, because this person and the energy is just incredibly negative. And there was a lot of mistrust, and it was very stressful. But we had a tour booked. And I thought, by gum, I'm going to do this out of spite. I'm going to be a professional, and I'm going to learn how to be a professional. Under these circumstances, I just know there's going to be a good purpose in that. And there was. And we stayed as a band for 2 years and played shows with our heroes, like DOA, SNFU. It was amazing. And I was learning a lot about being in a band, about camaraderie, about the music business. I learned that I was so disrespected by all the punks as a chick that I had to be a little bit abrasive, a little caustic. I had to be twice as hardcore. I had to be twice as good. And so I just killed myself trying, and that's what I did, and that's all I knew how to do. Dropped out of university, obviously. Didn't tell my parents for 6 months so that they could never get a refund. I did that to my parents, yes I did. I'm a middle kid, by the way. Good luck to you if you have more than 2. Eventually, I left that band. We moved to Vancouver. We did a coin toss. It was either Toronto or Vancouver, because of course, Winnipeg bands. And we went to Vancouver. The skateboarding culture was more appealing to those guys, and of course, well, pot. But not me. Oh no. The first drug I wanted to try was heroin. That's right. I was very proud. Very proud of that fact. I thought, here I am, it's 1991, and my new boyfriend at the time, him and his friends would dabble a little in that because, I mean, come on. The proximity to Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, the romanticism of heroin in the music business, all our heroes. Grunge was exploding. I was in a band called Chrome Dog and enjoying the different kind of voice I had. I found that it was a similar situation in this genre of music. I had to be twice as tough to be considered half as good. And I was okay with that. I never took it personally. Just like the gangbang, I didn't take it on as a trauma, thinking that would always solve everything. That would protect me from feeling hurt, from feeling it. So when my boyfriend started to fib about his drug use, we started to fight about it. And I thought, I've had enough. I caught him again. He was high again. And I was like, that's it. I'm pissed off. Do you have any more? Because I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it right now. We're going home right now from this party, and I'm doing it. And that's what we did. And in my brain, I thought if I let him shoot me up, I don't have to take responsibility for this. A miracle, right? Entrust your life into the high boyfriend. Great. Smart. I did heroin for the first time. Of course, threw up all over myself and had a great night. I called my mother in the morning. The very next morning, I called my mom. I said, Mom, I want you to know something. I did heroin. I did heroin last night. My poor mother, she's from Minnesota. She asked me for this. She wants me to call her with this shit. She's in Winnipeg, for God's sake. And in her way that she always is, so graceful, so gracious, so quiet, she said, well, Beth, get it out of your system so you can get on with your life. That was all she said. I didn't get any reaction from my mother. I was like, whatever. Well, I didn't really like throwing up on myself. I didn't like what that was like. And so I said, that's it. I did it the one time. I'm not going to do it again. I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, but that's kind of like lying to yourself. It's kind of not how it works. So I had my career in shooting heroin. We boiled the needles in a very low frying pan with our friends. Not because we didn't really know any better, but because we were like dumb and cheap, probably more than anything. We all had jobs, of course. And this behavior went on, and it kind of snowballs. What happens is you get drunk enough that your judgment's impaired, and you don't really want to shoot heroin because you don't really want to get caught shooting heroin at your job because you don't want anybody to see it. You don't want to puke in front of anybody, and certainly that uncontrollable water puke was something that I didn't care for. So I tried to avoid it at all costs. So I wouldn't eat during the day. On a Friday at work, if I knew we were getting paid and then we were going to a party, I knew it was probably pretty likely we were going to try and score some smack. So I wouldn't eat all day. Little did I know that laid the groundwork for my eventual eating disorder, but that's a whole other addiction. The last time I shot heroin, I knew it was going to be the last time I shot it. It was in November of 1991, a lifetime ago. And I felt very guilty. I called my friend in Winnipeg, and I said, I need to call you and tell you that I just used heroin for the last time. And she's like, you haven't, you're not in prison. Nobody's died. I OD'd a couple times, but, nothing too serious. I didn't croak. So she couldn't really understand why I was making such a significance out of phoning her. And for me, again, I had to lay it on someone else. There was a pit in my stomach for probably 5 years every time I was on the bus on Hastings Street. I would get an adrenaline rush. I would feel exhilarated and sick at the same time, even though I knew I wasn't going to score or use because I didn't want to get caught doing that. I was too afraid. But I knew then that there's no way if I crossed that line I would ever return. And I used to explain to my mother, people don't understand what it's like. They don't understand. Once you go under, it's like water. Once you go under and you're drowning, it is very hard. It takes years sometimes to get back up. When I was still in high school, my mother caught me with a beer and drove me down to Alcoholics Anonymous. In Winnipeg, it's called the Alcoholism Foundation of Manitoba, and she drove me straight there, and she marched me in the front door and said, my daughter's an alcoholic. She had a beer. Well, I was pretty pissed off. You don't understand, Mom. You don't drink. You don't understand. It's just normal kid stuff. Part of my prescription, having done their little checkoff chart, and of course, have I ever stolen money for alcohol or drugs? Of course I have. I didn't have a job. Yes, I stole money out of my mother's purse. Have you ever lied about your using? Yes, I have. I'm 15. Of course I do. So I checked off all the check marks, convinced that it was geared towards adult and I couldn't possibly be at risk. And they put me straight into a prescription of twice a week meetings at Alcoholics Anonymous. At that time, there was not a teen program for me. As you might guess, that became my dating pool at 15. I didn't know any better. Maybe the adults did. Can't say. But again, nothing we framed as a trauma, nothing we knew was against the law. There was no crime being committed. Unscathed from that, unscathed from my gangbang, unscathed from my flirtation with heroin, I went on. I became a solo artist because the band I was writing with told me I wasn't allowed to write songs about girl stuff. I couldn't understand that. Why not? I'm a chick. And they said, we don't like it, and you can't use the word vagina if you're writing a hardcore song. Well, okay, well, we're done. I had a manager who started managing Chrome Dog and eventually said, you know what, if you want to be a solo artist, we'll just make that happen. And I'll still be your manager. I said, okay. He said, but you can't really drink so much. And you'll discover why. You'll lose your voice. You're gonna not look very good if you have alcohol in your system all the time. You're gonna mess up on stage. There's gonna be nothing about you that is gonna draw people to see you because you're on a path that's not gonna work out. And I took those words to heart. There was a friend I knew in Rhode Island in a band called Belly and in a band called L7. Her name was Gail. She was about 10 years older than me, and Gail was a straight edge. Gail had never had a drink or a drug in her life, or a cigarette. What's wrong with her? But I thought, this is a movement. This is a statement that they're making, and it's part of their culture that seems to get respect. They seem to gain a lot of respect from other people doing that. I wanted to feel that. So I said, well, if that works for them, and Henry Rollins, well, then I can do that too. And I thought the only way that I'm going to avoid drinking, because every time I drank, I either wound up married, getting gangbanged, or sexually assaulted or date raped. Or puking on myself, or pooping in my pants, or something terrible would always happen. So I thought, I can't have that. If I'm going to be in a band, I don't want to have that. And it was fear-based completely. And so I went through my career. And it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. So I developed an eating disorder, which was great. I never had gas. I was not good at puking, although I tried in vain. I was great at fasting. I was fantastic at it. If I was stressed out, I would not eat. I couldn't. We were too busy. Couldn't. Plus, I was the only vegan. Come on. I'm not going to be the guy that goes, well, the band wants beer and chicken wings, but can you go out of your way to this other store halfway across Chicago and get some tofu for me? Never. I'm not that person. So I would just not eat, or I would just have popcorn, because we had a popcorn maker on the bus. And the guys would continue to drink and have their pizza and chicken wings, and it was great fun, and I just fasted. And eventually I discovered I just traded my addiction. Being diagnosed with breast cancer was the best thing that ever happened in my entire life, and I just still thank God for it every day, because it stopped me in my tracks. I had been doing 360 shows a year for 18 years of my life. I was a size -1. Those were the jeans I bought. I bought in the kids section. I loved it. It was great. Looked great in a video. Looked great. I didn't look like I was like emaciated, but it was a size -1. That is, believe me, that is not what I'm supposed to be. Breast cancer stopped me in my tracks. I was 36. I had just gotten married to my second husband. I met him at the gym. Straight edges go to the gym. And I couldn't tour. I was finally home. I went through chemotherapy, a lumpectomy. I went through radiation. I had an ovarectomy. Chemo was the best time of my life, I tell you. I was in a clinical trial at the BC Cancer Agency that was studying bone density in breast cancer patients. And part of that study was to see how exercise affected the density of the bone. It's all scientific nerd stuff. But I signed up right away. I thought, I'm going to be Lance Armstrong. I was still kind of anorexic, right? I'm going to exercise. I know I have cancer, but I'm going to exercise. And the best thing that happened to me was that I made all these friends who were in the program that I never, ever would have met in my whole life if I hadn't been in this program, if I hadn't been this bald, yellow person with all these other people in the room. We didn't know what anybody did for a living. You can't tell how old anybody was, but we had this common joy, this common desire to laugh. We laughed at ourselves. We exchanged stories. We shared. We formed bonds. We formed a sorority, a sisterhood that I had never had in my whole life. It was amazing. It was a blessed time. When you have cancer or go through a car accident or recovery or anything, you discover who steps up in your life and who steps away. It's human nature. I never took it personally when most of my friends shied away for 2-3 years. Usually it's because they don't know what to say, really, and that's the bottom line. They just don't know what to say, or they feel bad, or they don't want to impose, or they don't want to intrude. It's probably worse for Canadians. Truly. I wonder if there's a study. But the friends that do step up and that are there for you, I suspect are still in everybody's life. For me, cancer showed me what the truth was. And predictably, I was not married for very long. Don't forget, Liz Taylor was my inspiration too. She had a lot of marriages. She dyed her hair black. After cancer, I started to get asked to do speaking like this. One of the first things I was asked to do was speak about disordered eating. It did not occur to me that there might be a connection. I was really asked to be the speaker probably because they were like, you epitomize health. You're healthy, you exercise, and you do yoga, and you are a vegan, vegetarian, these things. But over the course of studying for that event and learning about some of the different things that go along with those diseases, I discovered that I was in that group. I was an overexerciser. I was orthorexic. I was unhappy. I was always stressed out. It was part of my control issues and validation issues that I shied away from, not being involved in drugs and alcohol. I just traded it for this. And let me tell you, nothing was harder than quitting smoking, actually. So during chemotherapy, I started eating like a normal human being. I gained 30 pounds in 2 months. And everyone I saw was like, oh, you look so healthy. And I thought, oh, they're trying to say something bad to me. But truthfully, no one really knew what a chemo patient looked like. I mean, this is a decade ago. All we had was that Julia Roberts movie where the guy was like dragging himself on the floor. We didn't really know anyone in chemotherapy. Now it's a different game. Now it's better. Trust me, if you have cancer, you want to be in BC. Eventually, going through my divorce, which was a whole other can of worms, I started to experience something called kidney failure. I didn't know it at the time. I just had a stomach ache and went to the hospital. Naturally, they thought it was a tumor, and it wasn't. It was called a kidney infarct. You got to say it correctly because it sounds like you're saying something dirty. But it was because I had basically had a stroke that went into my kidney because I had a hole in my heart. And it went the wrong way instead of going to my noggin or my ticker. Thank goodness. So I was in the hospital for quite a while. And one day this man came in who looked like Superman. He looked like Clark Kent. He's a cardiologist, Dr. David Wood. And he told me that he wakes up every day, jumps out of bed, and all he wants to do is fill holes. Hey, he was a good-looking man. Imagine my confusion. It was inappropriate. I'm not going to lie to you. He wanted to fill holes, and he was going to fix my heart, and he did. The day he fixed my heart, there was a lien put on my apartment, and I started to discover what divorce was like. I never thought that breast cancer was a challenge. It was not my health crisis. It wasn't my fear, my mortality. I thought, oh, thank God, maybe I can die. And not in a bad way. I just felt like I lived a full life. I went through my whole life with all these little things that didn't go as bad as they could have gone, carrying my survivor's guilt with me for that, and thinking every day I'm alive, I can wake up and know that I could die happy today. I discovered that having my heart surgery was my health challenge. After I got home from the hospital, and it's a day surgery, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. They don't crack your ribs every time anymore. They put Novocaine in your leg. And I don't know if you remember the dentist and the jaw pain you get from that kind of an injection. It's the same in your crotch. And the last thing you want to do on twilight is go, oh, it feels like the dentist between my legs. Because the nurses will misunderstand you. But they were good sports about it. I went home from my heart surgery and started to have TIAs, mini strokes, 12 a day. I would probably say for at least 5 or 6 days. And I really wanted to die. It sucked. And we had to go back to VGH in an emergency situation because I thought for sure I'm done for. And I didn't really care. I was okay. I was happy. My mom had come to stay with me. And I had lived a very full life. I'd been very gratefully living every day. Beside me in VGH, in the intake section of their triage, they brought a man in. And he was in distress of some kind. He was moaning and wasn't feeling very good. He was a First Nations man. I don't know how old he was. I would say we were probably the same age. They knew him by name. They were very familiar with him. And they said, Jerry, you're back. Come on, come on. And they put him on the gurney. And they said, how is it going? Here we go. And I was listening, straining to hear what was happening, because it caused quite a commotion when he came in. He had a seizure disorder. He'd had it his whole life. That's why they were familiar with him. He lived in a place downtown. It breaks my heart. He lived in an SRO. He'd always lived there. And every time he goes into seizure, he has to come by ambulance to VGH. And man, of course, his room gets ransacked every time he goes. Every single time. They steal his medication. He can't take it. So he goes into seizure again. They see him once a month minimum. And I thought, this is broken. This system is broken. This poor man cannot transcend his reality. I think for him, I have to be a positive person. Why should I go out in the world and survive? Why do I get to be on Jay Leno and he's getting his room tossed? It's not fair. Over the years, I go through, everyone cries, I'm sure, when they speak here. Don't pay any attention to me, but if my makeup starts running, somebody better hand me a tissue, I'm old. I go through my life, and I travel, and I see a lot of things. I meet a lot of people. I get a lot of stories told to me that maybe aren't told anywhere else. There was a song I wrote on my first album called Telling You. It was a song about being raped. So this is way before Me Too. Girls in my generation, we didn't have Me Too. We didn't have that. We didn't frame it that way. We didn't know these events were criminal. And I don't think anybody else knew either, to be honest with you. So now we can all look back and go, oh, wait a minute, this and this and this. But these things have never changed. And they're different from community to community. I grew up in small town Manitoba. Parts of my family still live in Manitoba and in Saskatchewan, in North Battleford, on and off the reservation. And I know for sure that we need to come together. And it's so hard when we have to see that not happening. It seems insurmountable, whether it's through healthcare, recovery, whether it is through Canada, where I'm proud to have been always able to claim I'm from. But the truth of the matter is, I am a guest here. I am a guest here. And that is the truth. When Canada stops talking and starts listening, that is when we're going to start on the correct path. It's a long road. It is a long road, just like me standing before you. My road was long to this moment. Your road to this chair was long. Everybody's got a story. Everybody has a story of trauma in their life, of addiction, of crime. My birth mom is a Canadian citizen, obviously. She's only 15 years older than me. I have had the opportunity to meet her and hang out with her more than once. And hey, man, it's cool. It is so cool. We look alike. She had a son and a daughter after me. And when I'm with my half-sister, she always giggles and says, oh my gosh, you do that just like Mom. And I love it. I'm like, oh my, I do? Oh, cool. I didn't look like anyone in my family, but I look a lot like my birth mom. And it's important to me. Our connection to people, family, chosen family, as we go through life. My sorority, my sisters of other chemo patients are my chosen family. My adult friends, my best friends, who I made here, are my chosen family. My family, my adoptive family, it is still my chosen family. And my birth family is my chosen family. And everyone here in this room today, because of our mutuality, our sharing, our like-mindedness, we're all here within purpose. Our purpose is to listen and to share and learn from each other, and to kind of go out from here and try and explain and express what we've learned, what we've taken away, how empowered we are, how we want to empower everyone else who needs it. People need support more than they are getting. The barriers people have are hard to transcend without the love and support and our energy, our acknowledgement, and our efforts to uplift everybody. And that's really what the joy of life is about. No matter what happens to you, no matter what you're going through, if you can uplift another human being, that is going to fuel you and is going to strengthen you just as much as it strengthens everyone else. It sounds cliche, but it's true. Together, we're stronger. I usually get the cane because I could talk to you guys forever. But I hope I have an opportunity to thank each one of you personally for coming today and yesterday. And thank you for having me and asking me to be here. The programs that you are doing at the college are second to none. And you're amazing. You guys are amazing. And I just want to express my love and gratitude for everyone in the room today. Thank you for hearing me and listening to my little story. And I hope to be able to hear yours. Thank you. Thank you. The reading glasses.